excited as ever. I'm Eugene Napoleon, my show, Relatively Sports with Eugene Napoleon. My Mountaineer fans, you're going to be excited about this particular guest. If you don't know him, once I bring him in, you will have a totally different understanding of what recruiting is all about. He is considered the #1 recruiting analyst in the entire country. This man has been all over the place. He actually played himself in Blindside. He's been in numerous other films. He has his own, the Tom Lemming Report on CBS network. Great man. He is none other than Tom Lemming, again, the #1 recruiting analyst in the entire nation. So he's my guest on Relatively Sports. Let's get him in. All right. What's going on? What's going on? Again, I'm Eugene Napoleon, and I'm honored and blessed to have the one and only Tom Lemming on my show, Relatively Sports with Eugene Napoleon. So what's going on, Tom?
Well, you've been bouncing around the country, Eugene, just like I did 40 years ago. So it's the same thing. But, when did I meet? I met you, I think, as a sophomore in high school, weren't you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you're talking like 37, 38, maybe 39 years ago, man. It's
a
been
long time.
a long time. But I'll tell you something. From day one, meeting you, it was a dream come true because of all the things that you've done in this industry. I was just sharing with my Mountaineer fans before I brought you in, how important you are to recruiting into this whole landscape of how parents perceive their kids to pick colleges and how kids choose to pick colleges, your honesty and what you bring to the table. What made you get into that line of work?
I was traveling. I didn't actually go to college. I was saving up money to go to Western Illinois. My brother was going there, university. Instead, I kept the money and just traveled around the world when I was 19, 20, 21. I was in the pyramids in Egypt. I spent a couple months in the Kremlin, believe it or not, during communist Russia. It was a different experience, but it was kind of fun. And I was all over Europe and part of Africa and part of Asia. I love travel. I wanted to do that. Then when I came back, when I was like 22 years old, I said, I better start thinking about something I have to do for a living. I was working I get the money going as a printer, but saving it up to go to school. Instead, I said I was going to do something maybe in baseball or football. And no one was doing what I did back then. There was a lot of regional people following. Like if you're in New Jersey, New York, the Newark paper probably had a little bit of recruiting at times. And the South had more in Birmingham, different cities, but no one really brought it together except Parade Magazine. So I decided to travel, and no one ever traveled to meet all the players. I did that the first year in 78, 79, traveled around the country to visit. That year was John Elway, Eric Dickerson, Dan Marino. And it was just, to me, I didn't have any money. So what I would do is sleep in my car every other day or 2 out of every 3 days. But when you're 22 years old, it's excitement. If you're 67, no, it's not.
Right, a little bit different deal.
Back then it was a lot of fun. So I did a lot, and then so I'd been at it about 10 years, or 6, 7, 8 years when I ran into you out in New Jersey. But you actually called me, I think, first, or I sent something. You were like 18 going on 30 even back then. So you're a lot more mature than most of the other guys.
I appreciate that, Tom. Thank you. It was an amazing experience meeting you for the first time because seeing all the things that you've done, and it's like you said, the John Elway, the Dan Marino, the Eric Dickinsons, when you call guys like that to say, I'm gonna put my stamp on them, these guys are great players, but take and again, I'm gonna give you this, and you're not gonna accept this compliment, but it's the truth. When you put your stamp of approval on guys like that, yeah, they were great high school players. But like you said, no one was doing what you were doing back then. It was so innovative. And before you knew it, when Tom Lemming said, this guy is going to be the guy, everybody started paying attention like, well, Tom said it, he's going to be the guy. And what I loved about what you did, like you said, a lot of people didn't travel to go meet the players, meet the coaches, actually see what these players were all about, except for you. And I think that's what makes what you do so phenomenally different than what anybody else is doing.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. For me, though, it was I loved it. Because of my travels around the world, I loved to travel. As a young man, my dad was a World War II vet who had been wounded by the Nazis and didn't like to travel after he came back from North Africa. And Sicily and all that. So we never took a family vacation. So I would just read books about travel. I would actually read about where you're from in New Jersey and New York, the history of all the places, or in the South. And I traveled everywhere that way in America, and I still do it. I drive all 48 states every year, and every now and then I'll go to Hawaii. I went to Alaska one time because CBS asked me to hit all 50 states, and they don't even play football.
So we're back. We're back. I
Okay.
see that we're back.
So you
So
want me to
Hey, Gene, hold on
ask
one
you
second.
again,
I'm
or
gonna get you connected. I'm gonna get connected onto this other one. I don't know what happened there. Give me 1 second.
yeah. So we have to start over.
We could just pick up off of the last thing I think I got was when he was talking about how he went to Alaska. Hold on 1 second.
Okay.
I'm trying to get it connected to my Bluetooth because for whatever reason it keeps getting knocked off the Wi-Fi, but it's not letting me do it for whatever reason. Shoot. Okay. Well, it's saying it's connected strong. So let's go with it and see if it'll stay through. It says it's fully strong, so hopefully it'll be okay.
Okay. There you go. There you go. So we're back. We're having little technical difficulties, but we're back. So Tom, you were talking about, I was asking you about what was it like to play yourself in 3 different movies, with Blindside being the biggest. You were saying you guys, you filmed it in Atlanta. I think you said
yeah, we
Atlanta.
filmed in Atlanta, and they treated you like a king. I loved there was food everywhere. I had my own trailer that was connected with Kathy Bates's trailer, the actress, and uh,
Wow.
but and I'm in the movie under a minute, but I actually did another scene. It was almost 5 minutes, and it took us 13 hours to film it. So about 2 weeks before the movie came out, the director, John Lee Hancock, called and said, "I got good news and bad news." And he said, "The good news is we're keeping your office scene, and the bad news we're taking out Tim McGraw's." And I go, "John, I had 28 lines in that scene, and here I'm not an actor, and I'm getting mad at a famous director." And I even said to him, I says, "Can't you take away some of Sandra's scenes? She has so many." And he thought I was kidding, which it was only half kidding. I was kind of upset that they took that big scene away, but the experience was invaluable to me. I just absolutely loved it, and I can see how they make movies. It's kind of a boring process for the people actually doing it, but if
Right.
it's done right, like they did Blindside, it came out fantastic.
Absolutely not. Again, you did because you're who you are. So to me, it's not even acting. It's just who you are. You know what I'm saying? But let me tell you something. Most parents don't understand this process. So if you don't mind, I remember my recruiting process. You were always very honest, and you were always very diligent in just trying to tell the parents and the young people, not trying to tell the kids where to go, but at least being honest about the universities that they were looking at. How difficult is it now? Because recruiting is totally different than what it was 10 years ago when I came out. How hard is it now to talk to athletes and to their parents about making the right choices of the type of schools that they should be looking at? How difficult is that for you?
It's a lot more difficult now, Eugene, because of the NIL money being tossed around. And a lot of the schools that are tossing the NIL money, it's like selling your soul to the devil, because the trade-off is you're not going to get that great of an education. You're going to be spending most of your time lifting weights, football practice, studying film, going to meetings and all that. And that's why I think it's going to be a little difficult. I always tell ball players, I don't tell them what school, I just say go for the education. Like I told you in AB, after you guys had left Pittsburgh, which was a good school, I remember I think we set up Illinois and a few of the other schools for you to visit, and you made good choices. And then you both wound up in the national championship game, which is unbelievable.
Right.
And a lot of guys make bad decisions. You were always a guy that would always sit down and find out what's best for yourself, both academically and athletically and socially and everything else. And a lot of the ball players don't. Right now, I just came back from a trip through Texas and all that, and a lot of the ball players, they're just looking for the money right now. They're waiting to see how much under the table money they're going to get from alumni that are not supposed to be talking to players, but are, and telling them they're going to get this and that. And a lot of it is promised. And you got to, and if it's not delivered, that's, I think, in the next couple of years, well, you'll see a lot of the kids turning on the schools and turning them in because they're not getting the kind of money they were promised.
Right. Which I think, again, far be it for me to say what somebody else should be doing or what they shouldn't be doing. But the bottom line is there is a moral code in this business that I think, just like the business that I'm in as far as entertainment and all of that stuff and music, where you're dealing with sometimes morally bankrupt people. And these decisions should not be made based on money and greed and all that, but there should be a moral compass. And I think a lot of these young athletes don't understand that. And it's unfortunate because, like you said, these institutions are doing exactly what they're supposed to do. They're going out, they're trying to get the best player possible so they can win football games, these coaches or whatever the case may be. But at a certain point, I think it's the parents and the student athlete really have to sit down and say, long term, you're not going to play. What if you don't make it to the NFL? Or what if you don't make it to the NBA? Then what happens? Like, what do you have to fall back on? That's why the educational component, and you've always said that. You've always said from day one, you got to pick the school that's going to give you the best education.
Yeah, even if you're getting two or three or $400,000, that'll go quickly over the next several years. You need an education that can support yourself the rest of your life. Some schools will use this. You're not going for 4 years, you're going for 40 years, which is true. A lot of them say it. I don't know if a lot of them actually mean it. And you can get different conferences that are more concerned about winning football. And I would think the parents have to sit back. And I know it's very enticing if you don't have money to say all of a sudden they're throwing big bucks at you. And, you got to be very strong to turn it down and say, and also the parents are being told how great that school is academically when they're probably not. They're probably not graduating that many ball players, but every coach that I've run into will exaggerate their graduation rate. And then the parents, every year it's a different group of parents. I always try to remember that they're unfamiliar with the recruiting process. So you got to kind of educate them. But the way they're being educated with the college coaches or with the alumni that are connected to each program, almost, like leeches, where they just they grab a hold of the players in their area and want to give them under the table stuff, especially the great ball players. And, and when you're 17, 18 years old, I'm not going to say I didn't win because I grew up fairly poor, and I wouldn't say, well, I'm going to take the money or not. Maybe I would. You get off with that kind of money, you don't think for the future. You're thinking instantly, I'm going to get a car, I'm going to get this, I'm going to get that. You're right. You need your parents or somebody that you're close to sit you down and tell you, read you really the riot act when it comes to doing what's right for yourself and your future, not for your immediate future.
Absolutely. I was blessed because I happened to have played for the legendary Frank Gargiulo at St. Joe's, and he was one that every school that came through those doors, he didn't care who they were. The bottom line was he wanted to make sure that my best interest was being met first and foremost, both academically and on the field and socially. So there was a lot of schools we talked about that, he wasn't too fond of because he kind of knew from his son being a big time recruit, Frank Jr. and J.D. Marvell, he kind of knew, okay, I see where this is going. You know what I mean? And I don't think this is going to be the best move for you. And what a great guy. I understood it. And then talking to you and talking to a few other people, you got to put that in its proper perspective. And for someone like you who've done this for years, is there one or two things that you look for when you're trying to talk to a student athlete and their parents in a particular school that they're particularly looking at, that you may be close to the school? Is there one or two things that you're looking at where you say, let me pull your coattail on this? I know something about this school that you may not know. Is it hard for you to have that conversation because you have such great relationships with all these schools and coaches?
Some of the schools, and I've learned maybe to be a little more subtle about it. So I'll tell them, well, you better investigate a little bit more, talk to the NCAA about graduation rates, or find out. The key is go to school. They're always going to have somebody who's maybe go identify some of the second or third stringers and see how they're treated at the school, both academically and athletically, or if they're just maybe forgotten people or just used as practice squad fodder. Then maybe that may not be the school for you, because you never know it's going to work out. You're you say if you're at Alabama, you could be a 5-star ball player and still be third string. So you got to be careful where you go, and you got to make sure that you're going to a program that's going to help you graduate and get a worthwhile degree. And nowadays, I think that's the key. A lot of schools will keep a guy eligible until his eligibility is up. And if they do get a degree, it's worthless. So you got to make sure that the ball players on the team now are studying towards worthwhile degrees and not just being kept eligible.
Man, I'm gonna tell you, and you said a mouthful right there, because I talk to a lot of student athletes, and I'm gonna tell you, unfortunately, the lion's share of them, the only thing they're thinking about, depending on the sport, if it's basketball, it's NBA, if it's football, it's NFL. They're not really looking at, like you just said, they're not looking at the long lens, they're looking at the short lens. Let me get in, let me pick a school where they have a seemingly a pipeline to the NFL or the NBA, and that's going to be me. Not understanding they're telling the next guy on that list the same thing that they're telling you.
Yeah,
You know what I
that's
mean?
absolutely true, Eugene. You know, what's
And
funny is what I get, there's some of the schools in the South, not all of them, but when you look at their brochures, it's got three things. How many guys we put into the NFL? Look at our beautiful facilities and look at all the good looking girls on the campus. Very little academics. You don't hear anything. And then, so they know how to identify the ball players that want those three things and academic. There's a lot of players, you know, that in any walk of life that really don't want to go to college. They want to get to the NFL. So they're making a good choice. You know, they'll be kept eligible so they can get that one shot at the NFL. So it may work out for them. And if they're really bad students, then, you know, more power to them. They know it. Like the one and done basketball players, they're not really going to college. They're going to play basketball for 1 year because that's the rule. And same
right,
thing with football. You can't go from high school to the NFL. So you've got to, you know, sometimes pretend that you're going to college and you're actually getting your training for the NFL in your farm system, which is that college that thinks more of football than they do academics.
wow. And again, see, this is why I have such a great respect and love for you, because you call it like you see it. That's the hardest thing, I think, for certain student athletes and parents to even understand, because sometimes the parents, they get caught in drinking the Kool-Aid because they see this big time coach come through their doors, you know, for the home visit, and they're telling them everything that they want to hear. And somewhere along the lines, there has to be that voice that says, let's be realistic about this. Let's kind of understand, maybe you're going to be a human being far longer than you're going to be an athlete. So God forbid if he doesn't make it, what does he have tangible to fall back on? And see, that's where you come in. Like I said, I just never forget the conversations you would have with me way back when. And Tom, I love you for that, because it was always honest feedback. And I hope and pray that most parents and young student athletes are listening to you when you're trying to give them that honest feedback.
Well, you know, it's sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I don't really volunteer info anymore, but I wait for them to ask me. And a lot of times, since I go meet every single top player just about in person, their mom or their dad or their coach or their uncle, whoever's the one most involved, will come up and ask me questions. And that's why I noticed the change in the atmosphere over the past year when the NIL stuff, because now sometimes a ball player could have an uncle that was out of his life completely, and he's coming back in telling them, hey, you know, because the uncle wants to get part, and he's the one now become the agent for the player. He's not worried about that player graduating. He's worried about him getting all the money so he could share it with the rest of the family and be broke by the time he gets out of college. Because so you always got to worry about guys like that, or you worry about sometimes street agents. They're more in basketball, but they're more prevalent in basketball. But there's some of them are starting to come up in football. So if you have good guidance and you got your parents, every parent has, you know, the well-being of their son, you know, obviously uppermost on their thoughts. However, since they're new to the recruiting process, they can be fooled by these great salesmen that are the college coaches. I've seen them over the years and I watched them, and some of them are just remarkable salesmen. And, you know, like in any walk of life, there's good people and there's bad people, and there's bad people in the football world. And I've seen some of these head coaches are bad people that I've seen, big names too, that are not good human beings, but they're great salesmen. And I see their personality completely change when a five-star walks in the room, as opposed to the rest of the time when there was a coach I was walking with, and I got along with him, but a lot of people didn't. We're walking down the Hall of Fame of that college the day before a game, and a little 10-year-old boy and his father waiting there, and going down the ramp, and the 10-year-old boy goes, I don't want to say his name, but Coach, can I have your autograph? And he goes, no. And he just kind of brushed him aside. And I go in, I says, Coach, why don't you just sign the autograph for the kid? He goes, if he asked for it, everybody's going to ask for it. They were the only people in the building. There was no one else there. And then we go around the corner and there's a 5-star ball player coming up, and that coach, all of a sudden, personality became Mr. Sunshine. And he was groveling almost to this kid and his parents. And you saw the difference of that coach. And I try to get along with all of them, but I could tell the different guys that I would actually like to have friends, like a Kirk Ferentz in Iowa is a great guy, Mac Brown in North Carolina, tremendous people. And James Franklin at Penn State is a great guy. There's a lot of good ones. Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame is a remarkably good person. He was a guy I put in the 2005 U.S. Army game, and we named him captain because he was so much like you, 18 going on 30. I haven't seen him in 17 years, and all of a sudden I wind up visiting Notre Dame a few weeks ago, and there he is, head coach at a very young age. So, but he's an exceptionally, even back then, just a good person, a caring person. And they've got the right guy now, so hopefully he could do well there. And like I said, there's some really good ones, and there's also some that are just collecting the money, getting more and more and more money, throwing people in and out of the program just to see what they can get, not really worrying about the player or his future if he's not going to help them win games. You can recruit a 5-star player. There's no guarantee he's going to be a 5-star player when you get him. But you treat them and you treat the 2-star players like 5-star players if you're a good person and you're a good coach. But believe me, there's a lot of them that don't. But when they're recruiting, they all act like that. So how do you separate the good from the bad? It's a matter of doing a lot of own research, finding out more about this guy and talking to the 2nd and 3rd stringers, the walk-ons, and finding out how they're treated in the program.
Tom, I'm gonna tell you something, man. I appreciate the information that you just shared, because this is golden. This is golden coming from you. And again, you're not going to accept this compliment, but you are top dog in this business, and you know that. I call you the guru. You are the #1 analyst in the entire nation. Had been that since I met you years ago.
Yeah, I've been at it the longest, for sure.
Absolutely. But I'm saying the stuff that you talk about and what you do for this sport, you are a blessing for this sport. You are a blessing for these student athletes and to their parents and to the coaches. And hopefully, sooner or later, we need to come up with a Hall of Fame for you. So I got to work on that. We'll talk about, we'll sidebar that conversation. I got to work on that for you. But it is listen, it's an amazing pleasure to have you on my platform, Tom. Thank you so much. I know you're busy. Thank you so much for taking this time and coming on Relatively Sports on my show, man. Thank you.
My pleasure. Next time we'll have to talk about your career, how good you were. You're kind of modest yourself, but you were a high school All-American. It didn't work out right at Pitt for 1 year. Then you go and become a great player at West Virginia. So, I mean, you knew what you were doing. So you didn't need a whole lot of guidance like a lot of the players do, because you were actually much more mature than most of the other players I dealt with.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you so much. Listen, before we go, I want you to plug, not that you have to because you are who you are, the magazine that you have. You actually published your own magazine. This is the Prep Football Report, correct?
Yeah, it's a 280-page magazine. I actually had Bon Jovi hold it up for me last week when it came out. So it's good to use some big names. I'll have to use some of your hip hop friends to hold up my magazine too.
Absolutely. Listen, my friend, I appreciate you. Thank you so much again. You have a blessed rest of the day, and I'll be in touch.
You too, Eugene. Take care. Great talking to you.
You got it. All right, Tom. So once again, that was the legendary Tom Lemming, the #1 football analyst in the entire nation. He's been that for decades. He's a great man, as you see. Very important that parents and students alike, when he's giving you advice, you definitely got to take it. This man has been everywhere. He knows every coach on every level. And man, what a blessing to have him on Relatively Sports with Eugene Napoleon. And I'm honored. I'm honored. So until next time, I'll see you next week. Take care, and let's go Mountaineers.